everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today, we have the irony of the century with Democrats demanding an ID to get into their convention, and compare that with their policies of anti-voter ID. We also have an update on the number of Customs and Border Patrol workers who are unfortunately no longer with us. And we're going to tackle a story about this progressive district attorney in Los Angeles who was accused of hiding evidence to get a criminal out of jail. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. The Biden-Harris administration has long called voter ID laws burdensome and unnecessary. But get this, you now have to show some form of identification to get into the Democratic National Convention. Hypocrisy much? News Nation did a little write-up on how you have to get into the DNC, and it says the Secret Service has been working with federal, state, and local law enforcement to ensure the safety of delegates, guests, and the public. As part of that, they've issued and put up a security perimeter, which crazy protesters are trying to tear down, and law enforcement and physical barriers will be there. It's going to require vehicles and pedestrians passing through certain checkpoints to provide identification for security screening. When I was at the RNC in Milwaukee, you had to do the same thing. You would submit your ID online when you were applying for credentials. And when you were in person, you had to show up, show your ID, and then they gave you a badge. And then that badge, which I think I have behind me in the studio, like right over there, if you can see it. But they issue you this badge, and then you get that badge, and it's your ID to get in and out of the convention perimeter. So I am perfectly fine with the DNC's protocol, right? I'm not upset with the DNC's protocol. What I take issue with is Democrats calling ID laws racist relics of Jim Crow, and then using IDs for the purpose of security. Our elections should be secure too. In fact, voter ID laws, many of them would still be less stringent than the DNC's ID policy. There are voter ID laws that just require proof of residency, not even proof of citizenship or photo IDs, which is what the DNC requires with photo identification, right? And voter ID laws are very popular in America as well. According to a 2022 Gallup poll, 79% of Americans support all voters showing photo identification at their voting place in order to vote. And if you think that the quest to end voter identification is noble, let me pull up this video for you, because I went to Detroit and I interviewed people and asked them their thoughts on voter ID laws, and this is a real answer I was given.
Do you think when we go to vote, we should have to show our IDs?
No.
Can you explain why?
Because we need all the voters that we can get. Hell, if it's a fake ID, we need it all.
That's freaking nuts, right? Moving on. Senator John Fetterman failed to disclose his children's stock portfolios, even as he tried to ban lawmakers and their families from owning stocks. How unaware could a person possibly be? This is a major conflict of interest and so hypocritical. Let me show you why. This is an article from the Washington Free Beacon, and I'm just going to kind of read through how Fetterman is just become such a hypocrite. So Fetterman has 3 minor children who reportedly own between $45,000 and $675,000 in stocks, and between $53,000 and $455,000 in corporate bonds. This is according to an annual financial disclosure he submitted this week. Fetterman amended disclosures, so he went and fixed these disclosures up and submitted as a Senate candidate, or he amended the disclosures that he submitted back when he was a candidate in 21 and 22. And this is required, okay? Everybody has to do this, not just for the Senate candidate or the senator. It is required for any dependent children, so minor children, right? So Senate ethic rules require senators to report assets, transactions, gifts, travel reimbursements, and liabilities for dependent children. So here's where you kind of get into the conflict of interest portion, where it reads that many of the stocks and bonds that his children have are in major banks like Citigroup and JP Morgan, which John Fetterman regulates those banks as part of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. Of course, you're going to view that as conflict of interest, right? Fetterman did not list his kids' investments in his disclosures as a candidate back in 21 and 22, or in his first filings in the year 2023. Also, incredibly problematic given that you can't just go from $0 to $675,000 in stocks that quickly. I mean, hypothetically, theoretically, you could, but that's not what happened here. The filing listed between $600,000 and $1.25 million in his children's checking accounts. That's crazy. That's literally insane. The American people we do not have $1.25 million in our children's checking accounts. It's actually insane. So the article goes on to say the belated disclosures could undercut Fetterman's image as this ethics crusader because John Fetterman has been running on this idea that the Senate should, quote, be getting shit done for the people, not their own portfolios. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. The Pennsylvania Democrat, whose wealthy father funded his lifestyle until Fetterman was in his late 40s, said in his Senate campaign in 22 that he would, quote, push to ban members of Congress and their families from holding or trading stocks. He also endorsed what is called the Ethics Act. Fetterman's campaign says Congress already has enough perks. Insider trading shouldn't be one of them. Tell that to Nancy Pelosi, right? Can I get an AO? AO, right? And then also the investments under another Fetterman, they call it a battle cry in this article. Quote, lawmakers should not be able to profit off the same companies that they are regulating, he said last year, which again, the idea that he owns $30,000 in JP Morgan bonds, $15,000 in Citigroup stock, and up to $15,000 in Bank of America bonds, $15,000 in First Horizon Bank bonds, and up to $100,000 in Barclays Bank bonds, according to these disclosures. And yet he is regulating some of those banks via the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. Why is it that the people who champion something like this always end up being the biggest hypocrites? Like, it's always men who are anti-domestic violence and they go on podcasts talking about, oh, I want to end domestic violence. Like, congratulations. So we all do. But then they go and they get caught in domestic violence. Or, take this instance. You're a politician railing against profiting off the stock market while your children profit off the stock market. And then, oh my gosh, you can't forget like the Washington Post. They're like, democracy dies in darkness. And then they only report on stories that push their preferred narrative. Like, this is not just a political issue. It's so cultural. I think anytime you see someone who makes their whole personality one issue, like red flags, they should go up. That's a good instinct to have, my friends. And if you have good instincts, you probably have good taste. And if you have good taste, then you better be subscribed to the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, or X, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your thoughts thus far. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps boost the show in the algorithm. Before I get to my next story, I need to issue a trigger warning to my conservative audience. Yes, this is real. I love you guys so much. And so I feel because I love you guys and because we have mutual respect for each other, I can level with you. There are some people in this audience who are being weenies about one word, unalived. I get it. You guys hate the word. I hate it too. But there's this thing called the algorithm that will ding videos, especially in an election year, for using this word. So please, I beg of you, get over yourselves, okay? Realize I'm not using this word to be woke. It's to spread our message on every platform. So if you're thinking, I'm going to comment something about the word unalived, just don't. Save yourself the time. Anyway, the number of U.S. Customs and Border Protection workers who unalived themselves in 2024 is set to surpass the number who unalived themselves in 2023. A board-certified behavior analyst said that these increases are in part due to the Biden administration's handling of the border. Okay, according to the New York Post, again, the number of people who have taken their own life in 2024 is about to surpass that 2023 number. Dr. Kent Corso, he is a former CBP suicidologist. He was talking with the Post about this massive problem, There were 8 unalivings, I have to say, in 2020, 11 in 2021. There was the worst year that CBP suffered back in 2022 when 15 employees took their own life. And now we saw, I believe, 7 this year thus far and 8 last year. So here's why they kind of say in part that it's it's the Biden administration's fault. First off, it's the idea that extra stress at work doesn't help. Now, I don't think we can entirely lay the blame on just stress that causes this. There's obviously more compounding factors, but it is one of the reasons. Corso, who is, again, this licensed suicidologist who's been board certified as a behavior analyst, said, quote, law enforcement officers see a ton of death. They experience loss. First responders are exposed to many, many more potentially traumatic events than the general population, which frankly puts them at higher risk for losing their life anyway. Just all law enforcement. So yes, of course, we see this with all law enforcement, not just what we see at the southern border, but I think it's important to note that we are seeing these numbers grow as we see the numbers at the border and the encounters grow, right? The second part of this was that Border Patrol agents, which make up about a third of the CBP workforce, these people at the border, all the Border Patrol agents, are saying that morale and mental health have just tanked in the last 4 years. They find a lot more people who are not alive. They've been encountering more people who make this very treacherous and dangerous journey because there is now incentive for them to come to the country. And also, the job title of what they do as Border Patrol agents has really downed. Of course, it's incredibly tragic that people are making this journey because there are incentives for them to make this journey. But agents were saying time and time again that the actual Border Patrol agents, the Americans here who are fighting for our country, they have kind of lost their sense of purpose, is what they said. One agent said that the, quote, badass patrol of the past, which was focused on deterring crossings and whatnot, it's now turned into basically glorified Uber drivers and babysitters. It's their job basically as Border Patrol agents to let illegal immigrants into the country en masse and just kind of do the bidding of the Biden administration. And so one of the Border Patrol units, I believe is a chief. Yes. One of the chiefs of the Yuma, so the Arizona Border Patrol sector, he said that, when you are sort of this service-driven organization, your job is to serve the border, right? And then all of a sudden your value and worth from the highest levels of the agency, the president, right? When they start to demonize you and vilify you, it starts to remove your sense of purpose, right? And you can combine that with other stress factors of life, like the stress of work, the changing of your job and your perceived worth. Yeah, of course, there's issues where you can't just blame the Biden border crisis for the unalivings, but yeah, you can blame them for the circumstances that may lead people to this. So I think the crisis at the border isn't just a slap in the face to countless Americans who foot the bill and deal with the consequences of increased illegal immigration. This policy is a slap in the face to Border Patrol agents who are losing purpose in their job. Having purpose in life, even if it comes from your job, is so important. And what the current policies are, which, by the way, are not going to change under Kamala, because these are Kamala's policies, right? This is going to exacerbate a very sad existing problem. But the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, they don't care. Because guess what? Border Patrol members, they don't vote for them. So why would they care? Next up, a Los Angeles whistleblower is accusing the far-left district attorney of retaliating against him for trying to get the truth out about a sex predator. You may be familiar with the name Hannah Tubbs. If not, I'll catch you up. Hannah Tubbs is a convicted child predator who was convicted as James Tubb and now identifies as Hannah Tubb. The left-wing prosecutor's office has seemingly tried to protect the convicted offender and even helped put Tubbs in a women's prison. And one courageous prosecutor is blowing the whistle on all of this. This is from National Review. Progressive LA prosecutor George Gascon has been accused of forcing one of his deputies to hide evidence against Hannah Tubbs. So a Los Angeles prosecutor, like I said, is accusing this entire Gascon administration of protecting a convicted male sex offender who attempted to get himself housed in a women's prison by pretending to be transgender. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this because of, YouTube and whatnot, but I will say this is kind of more of a verified fact. This isn't me or anybody at National Review or at the DA's office attacking this person's identity. This is a person who, according to lawsuits, has pretended to change their identity in order to get a sweetheart deal. So just throwing the facts out there. So LA County District Attorney Shay Sana, and by the way, Shay Sana is a man. I just want to clarify that. Shay Sana filed a whistleblower lawsuit this week against George Gascon and the LA Superior Court. According to the lawsuit, Gascon began a series of retaliatory actions after he issued a directive that forced this prosecutor, Shay Sana, to unlawfully hide evidence against convicted child sex predator James Tubb. The lawsuit says that in early 2022, Sana's very promising career trajectory was derailed when he publicly revealed how George Gascon's policies had led to a miscarriage of justice in the Tubbs case, nearly resulting in the release of a highly dangerous and violent sex predator. Sana also exposed how the entire George Gascon administration had suppressed evidence and directed Sana not to oppose defense counsel's arguments in order to secure Tubbs' release. So, let's go through the timeline. November 2021, James Tubb, or Hannah Tubbs, was convicted of sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl in a Denny's restroom 7 years earlier, according to the lawsuit. Tubbs was 17 at the time of the attack, but not at the time of the prosecution. Tubbs was also suspected to have sexually assaulted two 4-year-old girls in a public restroom. So clearly this is someone that is a danger to society. And so Shay Sana began working on the Tubbs case back in 2021, around the time that that same individual, James Tubb, had hatched this plan to pretend to identify differently so this person could be held at a women's facility in jail as opposed to a male facility. But after the conviction, Shay Sana was prevented from introducing evidence during the sentencing process because of policy directives from George Gascon's instructing prosecutors to go soft on juvenile criminals. So they were prosecuting an adult as a child because the crimes had been committed as a child, even though the person, Hannah Tubbs, James Tubbs, whatever, was an adult. So it goes on to say, Sana's colleagues pressured him into remaining silent during a hearing for Tubbs' sentencing and prevented him from introducing jailhouse records exposing Tubbs' scheme to pretend to be a trans person and exposing his kind of perversion, we'll say. Later, Shay Sana sent the recordings to personnel on Tubbs' rehab team, and Sana was then removed from the Tubbs case for doing so. The lawsuit says that Gascon's policies, this far-left DA that was pushed here and put in this place by George Soros, his policies and his enforcement of them required Shay Sana and other prosecutors to unlawfully hide the truth from the court by withholding relevant evidence such as Tubbs' jail call recordings and prevented the filing of all, quote, truthful charges. Tubbs' case became a scandal when for Gascon when portions of the jail recordings were leaked to the media. So we have far left prosecutors who are seemingly trying to destroy the careers of prosecutors who want to put criminals behind bars. That's so ass backwards. Like, it's hard to even wrap my mind around how someone would want to get into the job of seeking justice for people and then only try to help weasel disgusting perverted criminals out of the justice system. Oh, and if you think that criminals belong in jail and men can't become women, then you're what I would call a based person. Based is the opposite of woke, and it's also the name of my merch line, Based Apparel. Here at Underreported Stories, we are based in logic, facts, and truth, and if you want to support our mission, please head over to basedinlogicapparel.com or head to the show notes and get your based hat to support my work. And for our final story, a new audit released by the U.S. Postal Service's Inspector General found that a majority of postal facilities audited in February of this year in our 2024 primary failed to follow the election mail-in procedures. In an article from The Federalist, it kind of delves into how our current USPS systems for mail-in ballots are nowhere up to snuff. So, the Office of the Inspector General, which is part of the independent branch of the USPS, conducted a bunch of audits, evaluations, research, and investigations looking to figure out whether our election mail-in ballot system is actually working how it's supposed to. This all started back in November of 2023 with the intention of looking in and auditing the 2024 primary election in preparation for the 2024 general election. So it says, this article says that in preparation for this, what was conducted was a review of 15 judgmentally selected mail processing facilities and 35 delivery locations located across 13 American states as well as Puerto Rico during the February and March 2024 primary elections. And what the result found was, first, a very lack of compliance with our election mail and political mail policies. So we basically have kind of a policies rule book on how you're supposed to go about dealing with mail-in ballots. And the first findings from this report found that the Postal Service employees are not complying with these policies that we have in place. So the guidebook outlines how postal employees must certify that their facility is clear of election and political mail every morning, and how they must, quote, correctly document the election and political mail arrival logs in the morning. And what is actually happening is that the personnel, the people running these USPS facilities, did not complete their daily audit checklists as required by policy, and some personnel would mark items as completed even though they were not completed. The second problem that we saw, according to the USPS audit, was that there are a lot of operational risks that delay timely processing and delivering of election mail. Specifically, they found that there's just an inconsistent coordination between the different locations. So according, again, to this report, 1 in 82 ballots did not make it to the election office on time to be counted. There's a ton of contributing elements to this, but the problem and the answer are all combined in one, that people's ballots are not getting to the proper location, if any location, in time to be counted. And this is what is continuously delaying our elections, as well as making them seem seemingly unfair. I think this story also really gets at the heart of the first story in today's show about Democrats' hypocrisy on voter ID. What I've just never understood is this idea that America gets elections perfect. Like, the left loves to talk about how awful America is, except for our election process. What's wrong with making our election more secure? Like, the worst thing that could happen is that our election is more secure. But I will be tackling this whole subject in a video on YouTube, Rumble, and X that will be released tomorrow. If you're a real story seeker and a true member of this online community, will you please drop the facepalm emoji? Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys back here next time. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.